Good musical morning, grade 10s. My name is Colleen and I am a French horn student at Brandon University. Today we're going to work on different exercises to achieve good dynamic contrasts, different articulations, and we're going to even work on a 2-octave chromatic scale. Let's get started. Before we start to play, it's important to establish a good mouthpiece warm-up. In this video, we're going to do one that is similar to the warm-up I talked about in the grade 8 and 9 video, except it's a little bit more intense. We're going to choose a middle tone that feels natural to start with, and then from there we will descend a perfect fifth, back up to that tone, descend a perfect fifth, and come back up to that tone and hold it for about 4 counts. Then you'll choose a pitch that's chromatically lower, you'll go down a perfect fifth, back to the pitch, down a perfect fifth, and back to the pitch, and hold it again. And we'll continue that pattern working our way down until you get as low as you can go. It'll sound like this. 1, 2, here we go. Once you hit a note that's as low as you can go, hold it for as long as you can. Now let's do the same pattern, but we'll work our way upwards. We'll start at that same middle pitch. We'll go up a fifth, back down, up a fifth, back down, and then we'll ascend chromatically and continue that pattern until we hit the highest note we can play comfortably. Here's what that will sound like. 1, 2, 3. Great mouthpiece warm-up for horn players because we often get notes in the passage that have the same fingering and the only change is within our air and our embouchure. This gets you used to skipping intervals with only your lips, and it's a great thing to practice while you're at home. Once you feel like your high range and your low range on the mouthpiece are both warmed up, let's put everything all together. In order to practice coming in for high entrances, we're going to just start on the very top note we can possibly hit, while making sure that our faces are relaxed, and then we're going to come all the way down in one big siren. Then, after you've started at the top and gone all the way back to the top, start at the bottom, go all the way up and then back down. Flip-flop between these two a few times from starting at the top and then starting at the bottom. And then once you feel like you're ready to go, start playing. Here's an example of starting from the top and bottom. 1, 2, 3. And then one from the bottom. Now that we've warmed up with our mouthpieces, let's do a warm-up with dynamics on the horn. We're going to do long tones with power, and this is an exercise from F. Horn Patrick's warm-up book that I will link down below if you're interested in purchasing. It's a great resource that I highly recommend. Now what we're going to do is we're going to play our concert G major scale, which means that we'll start on D. For each note of the scale, we will hold it for 16 counts. We'll tongue for 8 counts, tongue again for another 8 counts. We're going to work our way from piano to fortissimo, and then from fortissimo back down to piano. I'll insert a picture of the exercise here so that you can see what I'm talking about. Then, after you've played the full dynamic range for that note, rest for 1 bar, count to 4, and play the next note. As you're playing this exercise, I'd like you to visualize your sound and your dynamic contrast so that it's like a wave that crashes upon the shore, hits the fortissimo, and then slowly ebbs back into the ocean, back down to piano in a nice smooth way. Not like a train that's racing by, like, and then it's gone. That's too harsh. Let's not do that. Just a nice wave that hits the shore and then comes back down. This is also a great exercise for breath support. You can take a breath if you need to at the fortissimo part, but if you can do each note in one breath, that's great too. It's something to work towards. 1, 2, here we go. Rest, 2, 3. 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 Now that we've done our long tones with power and we're feeling comfortable with our tone and dynamic qualities, let's go and do something for articulations. We're going to play an exercise called Wake Up Tongue from F. Warren Patrick's book, and it's going to be centered around our B-flat concert scale. This one's going to be a little bit more challenging than the one we did in the previous video for grade 8s and 9s, because instead of just staying on the same pitch for each rhythmic pattern, we're going to actually move and arpeggiate a little bit. I'll insert a picture here so that you can see what that looks like, and here's what it will sound like. 1, 2, here we go. Now on this exercise, the tempo says that a quarter note equals 160. You can take it as fast or as slow as you want for now and keep it feeling comfortable, but I encourage you to work towards getting it up to tempo by using a metronome. Another thing that you can do with this exercise is add slurs into different parts of that passage of eighth notes. I'll show you a few different versions, and you can put them in as much as you want while you're practicing this one at home. First, we'll start with slurring all of the eighth notes together. I'll just play you the first 2 bars. It'll sound like this. 1, 2, 3. Another version, you could slur the first 2 eighth notes and slur the last 2 eighth notes. So it'll sound like this. 1, 2, 3. You could even just slur the first 2 and put a staccato note on both of the last ones, like this. 1, 2, 3. You can do whatever you like. so I encourage you to get creative and make it your own. Now let's talk about chromatic scales. We're going to span 2 whole octaves, and we're going to start with F. Now, in order to find our F that's an octave below where we started in the last exercise, let's slur our way down that scale to find it. It's very challenging to pull it out of thin air and just be able to play it on its own right away, so it's something you can work towards. But practicing slurring from the middle F down to the low F is definitely a great way to get there. Here's what that will sound like. 1, 2, 3. Now that we've found the low F we're going to begin with, I'm going to insert the fingerings for your 2-octave chromatic scale. If you have a double horn like this and you use a thumb trigger, your fingerings will be right here. If you have a single horn without a thumb trigger, use these fingerings. Pause the video now to write them down if you want. Here is how the entire 2-octave chromatic scale sounds when I play it in quarter notes. 1, 2, 3. You can practice this as fast or as slow as you like, and try adding different articulations as you change from note to note. Our last 2 exercises for today are centered around articulation and different note values. They're both from the Maxime Alphonse book number 1, and they are exercises number 1 and number 22. I'm going to put a link down below in the description box if you're interested in downloading this workbook for free. You can get it at IMSLP and it costs absolutely nothing. It's a great resource to have. Let's start with exercise number 1. Now, as I play exercise number 1, listen closely for an echo that happens when one part returns in a different level of dynamics than it did before. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. This exercise is great to be using at home right now because you get to practice your articulations, so your accented notes and your staccato notes, but also your counting, because not only are there quarter rests, there's also an 8th rest thrown in there, so it just keeps you on your toes for counting. You also get to work through different crescendos and decrescendos and levels of dynamics that make it more musical. Finally, we have exercise number 22. Now this one's very challenging because the slurs are applied to different notes throughout the entire excerpt. You can't be sure that you know what to expect because it just changes so much. So pay close attention to the notes in which they're applied to and which notes the writer wants you to play staccato. Here's how it sounds. 1, 2. This example is a great exercise in phrasing because in music you're always going somewhere. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end to each phrase, just like a sentence, and if you use the motion that the composer has given you, you can make it even more effective. In the third system of this exercise, when you have one single quarter or single eighth note and then 3 slurred eighth notes right after, da 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 da. You can use those three to really drive forward and push the music along. So don't get too stuck playing up and down like this, but use the motion throughout the piece to move it forwards. Thank you so much for joining me for this lesson today. We discussed how to play long tones with power by using good tone and lots of dynamic contrast. We also learned how to play a 2-octave chromatic scale, and we talked about different ways to use these exercises to hone in on your articulation skills. Thank you so much and happy practicing!